Hello and welcome to another episode of the WEM Video Academy. Today we are going to have a look at exposing a web service. Web services are web-based interfaces between applications and services on the internet. For instance, between a mobile application and a database server, or between two WEM applications. The WEM platform offers a no-code implementation for building and exposing web services. Exposing a web service means providing functionality or data to online services, requesting that information. Requesting information from a web service is known as consuming a web service. Think of an exposed web service as a shop, and of consuming a web service as visiting that shop and buying products from it. Web services are exposed through different protocols and standards. The WEM platform offers two main features for connecting to a web service, either by using the HTTP request node under the REST standard or by consuming the web service under the SOAP protocol. SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol and provides a highly programmable way of interfacing with a web service. Would you like to learn how to consume web services or use the HTTP request node? Then look for the related videos in the WEM Video Academy. Building and exposing a web service can be started in the blue Integration tab inside the folder called Web Services Exposed. A WEM web service is exposed as a REST web service, a SOAP web service, and a JavaScript web service simultaneously. We can start building a web service from the three-dot context menu and selecting the option New Web Service. We will see the New Web Service dialog appearing. At the top of the dialog, we can choose a name for this web service. Below that, we can choose the suffix for the web service URL path. This will create a direct link to the web service. The top checkbox is used for compatibility with legacy applications, while the bottom box allows to replace field names with technical names. You should not have to use these checkboxes unless in specific use cases. Further down, we see the web service configuration details for preview and the staging and live runtimes. These refer to the runtime of the application hosting the exposing web service, meaning this one. Each section starts with the method of metadata exposure of the web service. The structure of the web service is defined by the WSDL or Web Services Description language. There is a choice between public URL for linking to the WSDL file remotely, and by WSDL file requiring the consumer to obtain and upload the WSDL file locally. As soon as the web service URL is filled out, the web service can be created. When reopened, the link at the right-hand side of the window allows access to a web page displaying the automated web service documentation. We will come back to this documentation later on in this video. Next is the encryption method. This drop-down features three options. None means the web service will be serviced over an insecure HTTP connection. Transport means the web service will be serviced over a secure HTTPS connection. Message means the web service message itself will be encrypted. The transport option uses the SSL certificate of the WEM application itself and is the default and preferred option for encryption. Finally, the authentication method. This drop-down contains four options. None means the web service is not authenticated and can be used by anyone, even in preview. Client certificate means the web service is authenticated by a client certificate, either self-signed or from a trusted certificate provider. Username password built-in means the web service is authenticated with a predefined username/password combination. Username password flowchart means the web service requests a username and password from the consumer, but the verification needs to be done in the web service logic, for instance against a user database list. Please take care when using the last option. If the flowchart does not securely complete the username password check, the web service may become accessible with invalid credentials. After saving the web service, we will see it represented by a globe icon and the chosen name in the Web Services Exposed folder. By double-clicking the web service or selecting the option Edit Settings from the context menu, we will see the Edit Web Service dialog appearing. The next menu option, Edit Header Bindings, cannot be used in a regular public runtime environment and should be ignored here. This feature is available in the HTTP endpoints feature. See the related video on HTTP endpoints elsewhere in the Video Academy. The last menu option in this section, Edit Documentation, will allow to add custom information to the automated service documentation we discussed earlier. Now that we have created the web service, it is exposed to the internet immediately. It is a good practice never to expose a web service without authentication, and that includes preview in the development phase. Let's set the authentication method to username/password built in. You will see a link appearing to a username/password repository specifically for this web service. This will allow to add one or more username/password combinations by username. The username can be used later on to identify the consumer calling the web service. In the same way, selecting the message encryption option will grant access to the certificates folder of this project. However, the message authentication option is more or less deprecated since the transport option and HTTPS were introduced. It is kept in the options list for backward compatibility. Now that we have set up the web service configuration, let's have a look at what we can make our new web service do. First, let's expand the web service and explore its contents. We can create one or more operations in the web service, which are functionalities inside the web service that can be called by a requesting service, also known as a consumer. An operation can be created via the option New Operation in the context menu at web service level. Expanding an operation will show a flowchart and 3 folders: the input folder, the output folder, and the faults folder. The folders are exposed to the consumer, but the flowchart is not. The flowchart is the heart of the operation. It is an action flowchart determining which logic should be executed once a consumer calls this operation. The flowchart uses data from the input folder, returns data to the output folder, and exits to fault nodes defined in the faults folder. The input folder lists the input requirements of the web service. This is the data that needs to be received by the web service operation in order to be able to process the correct data. The output folder lists the format of the response of the web service. The flowchart can use any part of this little data model to build the response sent to the consumer. A successful response will be accompanied by a status code 200. The faults folder contains fault handling and messages. These will be available as fault exits to the consumer and can be used to process an error flow or inform the user about an error in the operation call. A fault exit will be accompanied by a status code 500 and a fault message. Note that a fault exit is not the same as an error exit. An operation can be regarded as a micro-WEM application inside your project. It will run autonomously when called by a consumer, and it uses its own data model and fault exits. It can also access action flowcharts and the regular data model in your project. Session fields used by the operation do not affect the values of those fields in your user session. Let's build a web service returning a list of customers based on a customer ID. The customer list is prepared in the data model of the application and contains a collection of virtual persons. First, we will build the input folder. For now, we will be requesting a single numeric customer ID for one customer only. If the consumer submits 0, we will send a list of customers. Then the output folder. This will be a list of customers with some of the customer list fields. We will create a list inside the folder and then add some fields such as first name and last name. More fields can be added later on. Finally, the faults folder. We will add a fault message for not being able to find the requested customer ID. The fault message will contain a calculated text field with a message. Next, we will build the operation flowchart, which we already prepared a little bit for this demo. We do not need to bother with handling the authentication since that is built in, so we can dive straight into the process. Let's explore the flowchart structure. We see the end success node for successful completion of the process. When this end node is reached, the output of the web service will be sent to the consumer with a status code 200. We also see the end fault node here for the customer not found situation. This is the exit related to the message we defined in the faults folder. Now the flow will be as follows. We will start the flowchart with a decision node checking whether the input customer ID exists in the database or equals 0. We will proceed into the flow if that is true. In all other cases, we will exit to the fault node. We will loop the customer database list based on the value of the input customer ID. If that value is 0, we will select the first 10 customers, assuming of course that these have customer IDs 1 to 10. If not 0, the loop node will find the requested ID. For every row found, we will add a row to the output customers list and assign the customer details from the source list. We will close the flow like this. Do not confuse the customer source list and the customer output list here. When the loop is finished, we will end the flowchart, which will send the response to the consumer. We are almost ready to test our service. Let's go back to the automated web service documentation to find out how we can link to our service. After clicking the documentation link, we see the opening page of the documentation, including the custom information we submitted earlier. At the bottom, we see our web service operations and we choose Provide Customer Data. In the next page, we see 3 structure blocks, one for the input structure, one for the output structure, and one for the fault structure. Since the web service is exposed in 3 different ways, we find tabs for each of the 3 exposure types. For our test, we will choose the HTTP/JSON tab in the input structure. Here we see which information needs to be submitted when calling the web service. We also see the deep link to the operation for an HTTP request. Clicking the same tab in the output structure will tell us which response we are about to receive from the operation after our service call. And the same goes for the fault structure. Now we can test our web service. We can do this in WEM by either consuming the web service or by using the HTTP request node, either in this WEM application or another one. Both methods can be found in the related videos elsewhere in the Video Academy. We can also use a lightweight free tool called Postman for this purpose. Postman can be downloaded from public sources and can be used on a laptop or PC immediately without installation. Let's configure a call to our service in Postman as follows. We submit the URL to the service in the address bar at the top. We set the request method to post. In the Authorization tab, we select Basic Authentication and submit the credentials we defined in the built-in username and password list. In the Headers tab, we add the request header content type and we set it to the value application/JSON. In the Body tab, we select RAW as well as JSON. And we copy-paste the input structure from the documentation into the body field. We then replace the field type with an actual value, starting with 1. Now we send the request to our service and we see the response arriving as expected. Before we continue, let's first test our web service security by unselecting the basic authentication option. We send the request and we receive an error message about missing credentials. The web service is secure. Now let's test again with different customer IDs and see the responses arriving as expected. When we choose 0, we see a list of 10 customers and a status code 200. When we choose -1, we see an error message and a status code 500. Change it to 3 and we see a different single customer, again with a status code 200. We have now successfully built and exposed a secure WEM web service. This will give you unlimited possibilities to share functionality and data with other WEM applications or third-party services. And that concludes our video. We hope you enjoyed it. Please leave your feedback in the comments below and share the video with your colleagues and friends. We hope to see you soon again in the WEM Video Academy.